If you've been in the reef aquarium hobby for any length of time, I think you will naturally develop a real passion and fascination around protein skimmers, because there's a lot of ways that they can work. There's a few different main categories. We've got air-driven, venturi-driven, needle wheel, and then a broader category of downdraft. So here at the studio, we use almost every protein skimmer there is. Before we started this video, I was thinking to myself, like, I don't think there's a protein skimmer I haven't used as far as like major model designs. So this video is not at all a top 10. We're just showing off some of the skimmers that we use here at the studio. And I'm gonna start out by showing you some of the skimmers that are not currently in use, just to give you a really nice appetizer, a nice sampling of a wide range of different protein skimmers. So let's get started. The skimmers you see behind me are not even close to all the protein skimmers that we have on the shelf as kind of reserved and kind of backup. But I just want to tell you about a few of them because they have a lot of sentimental and personal value. The first one I'm going to show you here is the H&S. Goodness, I don't even remember what the model name of this one is. The Aqua pump is completely locked up, but I think I purchased the skimmer when I worked at the store for the store display tank back in, must have been 2000, 2008. And I remember my manager at the time, Dave Marriott, he was mad at me because it doesn't look like $700 a skimmer, and you got to rewind the clock 15 years. You know, $700 a skimmer back then would get you a pretty big model. So I really love this one because it's a dedicated recirculating design. When the store changed hands, I actually bought this skimmer from the store for $100. But basically it's a purely recirculating design, and then you feed it a separate, tool of water, and the water outflows. But I'm looking forward to putting this back into use in the future with an upgraded Aqua pump, maybe a controllable needle wheel pump. Next up, we have the ETSS Reef Devil. The ETS was an environmental, oh my God, I totally forgot. Environmental Tower Super Skimmer. There was a period of time when ETS skimmers, like the brand name, really almost became like Google, became like Kleenex. It was like the name for this style of protein skimmer. This particular version has two downdraft tubes with adjustable air intake, so you can modulate the airflow. These were freaking crazy. This is way before needle wheels kind of caught on. They process a ton of water, a ton of air, and the only kind of downside to these is you really need like a ton of water flow through there. You really need like a lot of pressure, and so they're great at processing a lot of water volume, which makes them just really not practical for like home aquariums. So they're really efficient at larger water volumes, but Rob Mouget brought this over from his collection to add to ours, and I think we'll put it to use in the future. So the last skimmer we want to share with you that's not currently in operation is the Nios Quantum 220. This skimmer is not nearly as big as comparably priced protein skimmers, but it really swings above its weight class. What I mean by that is it pulls a consistent load of scum and just has a really good balance of air and water going into it. We had some initial challenges using it here at higher elevations. We're a mile up, and the pump tends to choke a little bit on that really thin air. It can just pull in so much more air that it gets out of balance. So what we've done to really dial in this protein skimmer is to turn down the air intake a lot, and that really helps to get it operating really well for our purposes. So it's only temporarily not in service. I'm sure we're going to put it back on a tank here in the near future. But now let's go over and take a look at a bunch of skimmers that are in use. This is the Toonsie Dock 9014, I believe. This is about a $400 skimmer. It's controllable, and one thing I really love about this skimmer is it kind of has an auto leveling feature, so it's really easy to dial in. But the reason we use it on this particular setup is, you see our sump is really short, and we can just barely get the cup out after draining it into the other side. So it's really quiet. It's got a built-in air silencer sensor. Once again, we've kind of throttled back the air. We find better operation pretty much on all our protein skimmers when we throttle back the air just a little bit. But yeah, it's a consistent performer. On this setup, we tend to run a little bit more wet skimmate, just so it can fill this cup and overflow. We added our own little cup drain to it, and yeah, it's a good little protein skimmer, a very small footprint, useful for tanks probably up to about 120 gallons, and been using it for years. This is a really great like entry-level choice, especially if you've never used a protein skimmer. This is the Aqua Duo division line of protein skimmers. It comes in a 125, 250, and 500. This is the 250 model, and I use it just because I like it. It is almost exactly well-tuned not to overskim about 170 gallons of water. This tank is full of corals. We got like 4 big yellow tanks. But one thing that's really cool about this design is instead of like trying to crank a ton of air to the protein skimmer, which if you dial it in well can remove more skimmate, but also it leads to a lot more variability in how you adjust it. Seachem went with more of a long contact time approach with you know, very strong spin to how the water is injected into the protein skimmer. So the only thing different here is we've just kind of done away with their adjustment dial thingy that adjusts the standpipe, and took away the nylon sock. We just didn't really find a need for it, because once you have this skimmer dialed in, you just don't really have to adjust it. So instead I just kind of put a solid pipe in there and it flows down the bottom. So let's go check out another one. All right, so the next skimmer I want to show you is the Ultra Reef UKS 190. This is a kind of a space saver design. This is one of my favorite skimmers that I've ever used. If the NIOS you know, swings above its weight class, this thing just absolutely dominates its category and higher. It is some of the best craftsmanship, bar none. I know if you're on video, if you're watching on this video, it's kind of hard to understand what I mean, but like every part of this protein skimmer is lathed except for the body itself. It has kind of a very gentle cone design. It uses a Seachem SK900 plus, so slightly tweaked version of one of the most workhorse protein skimmer pumps in the hobby, but every aspect of this particular skimmer is just very finely crafted, very finely tuned. The attention to detail is just on another level, and it's actually really quiet by using a very different approach. So most protein skimmers will try to use some kind of like vibration isolation with a lot of rubber, a lot of things that can absorb vibration, but Ultra Reef, they went a different route by using a very solid base. Like the base probably weighs 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds maybe. There's just kind of a solid ABS plastic, and the pump is firmly attached to it to prevent vibration in the first place. So this is absolutely just one of my top favorite skimmers here at the studio, but we like using a lot of different skimmers, and we're going to check one more out. This here is the Cove i200. This is kind of a special device here at the studio because I actually had this before the studio, and I was commissioned to do a video about it by Cove, and this is one of those things that almost precipitated the formation of the studio, because I started realizing I needed more space to review and test more products. So this is just a good, like super classic kind of wine-shaped protein skimmer body. Everything about the design is pretty standard issue, just a needle wheel pump. I believe it's an Aqua Duo up 5000, so that one is controllable, and it's just built like a tank. We've got a wedge valve over here to adjust the water coming out. The air is super fine. The needle wheel is a little bit large. It has really fine needles, so we do need to clean it a little bit more often than some others to keep it running in peak condition. But this is kind of our foundation mare for those of you guys that know a little bit about horses. So this one kind of kicked off some things at the studio, and I think it's always going to be in use. All right, so here we have the Maxspec Jump SK900. This is a brand new protein skimmer. We just told you all about it in a recent video. It's only starting to trickle out around world aquarium markets. I think it debuted at Reef Stock a few weeks ago. This is a successor to the Maxspec Air Aqua Duo. If that skimmer was kind of like the concept car that you see at the car shows that has like all the bells and whistles, which is available to buy, this this is actually kind of a more practical version of the Aqua Duo, which we'll show you next. It's just a nice controllable protein skimmer. We're currently running at 60% on this sump. It's got a nice shut-off switch. Man, this has really got it needs to be standard issue, the shut-off float valve for controllable protein skimmers. Yeah, it just kind of has 2 air intakes. It's a small footprint, runs really well. And now we'll show you the predecessor to the Jump SK900. Here we have Maxspec first ever protein skimmer. This is the Aqua Duo. This is that concept protein skimmer I was telling you guys about. So it's a dual intake, dual needle wheel. Like the SK900, one of its claims to fame is that internal needle ring that surrounds the needle wheel that helps to really chop up the air into very, very fine buttables. It was the first one to introduce this kind of interesting gate valve mechanism. It has the built-in auto shut-off valve for when it gets full, fully controllable DC pump, also wirelessly controllable and programmable. So some of these features are really welcome, and others were really kind of distilled down for the SK900. But this skimmer performs very, very well. One of the challenges about it is it takes, I don't know, a good 5 to 10 minutes to take it apart, and significantly longer to put it together. This is one is always kind of a challenge when it comes to really deep cleaning it, but right now it's operating very, very well, and it's running on about 220 gallons of water, and I think I'd still recommend it for even larger volumes. Here we have our almost entirely native Red Sea Reef Aquarium display. This is the Reefer Skimmer SK900. That is such a good value protein skimmer. Always cranking, really small footprint, big ol' air silencer, and it runs well even when it's kind of dirty. The only thing that we've done to it recently is we swapped out the 1200 for the PSK 1200 SDC, the controllable version. So basically the same pump, and the sine wave control of the DC pump actually does reduce a significant amount of noise, and it allows us to control it and put it on feed mode and timer mode. One cool thing about the PSK 1200 SDC is that when the power is interrupted, it has like a 60 to 120 second delay where it'll run at intermediate speed before ramping up all the way, because when your power goes out, your sump might be running a little higher. That causes your protein skimmer to overflow. But even stock, the Red Sea Skimmer SK900 is a really awesome large protein skimmer for the price. All right, so for the fish tank, we need a little bit more heavy duty protein skimming. So on this tank, we're using the Reef Octopus Super Space Saver 250. So the Triple S 250. This is just a really nice, powerful, large volume protein skimmer. It's got a big old cup. We actually only run it at 60% because we find that that's just enough for this about 150 gallon volume. A controllable pump, it's only got 5 speed settings, so you don't have 10, 20, 30, you got 20, 40, 60, and we tend to run it at 60. But it has, what I really love about the controller, it's got a 15 minute and a 60 minute feed mode, so quarter and a full hour. And it was actually one of the first protein skimmer designs to include a shut-off float switch, which is designed to go into the cup lid so that when it's full, it'll turn off the pump so it doesn't overflow into the tank. And as you've seen in a previous video, we actually put the float switch here on the auto top-off reservoir, which we've transformed into very large volume, basically skimmate collector. So this is just a real workhorse protein skimmer, never gives us any problems, and this is just a great option for our fish tank where we feed a lot more food. Next up, we have one of the sleeper models of protein skimmers. This is the Dalua Australia Great White DC12. The Great White protein skimmers first launched with AC pumps that were non-controllable, but their DC follow-up really introduced a much quieter operation, controllable settings, and this is actually pretty well known for having the most performance in the smallest footprint possible. So if you have a really tight sump, the Great White protein skimmers are some of the best to look at, and it's also incredibly silent because it uses kind of this circular air silencer built into the neck that just makes that sound travel round and round and round, and you never hear it outside of the sump. So this is a great skimmer. We love it here for kind of our Australian style setup, and we have one more protein skimmer to show you. Last and probably the least is the built-in Prism protein skimmer on our Red Sea Nano. I do say least because this is one of those skimmers that's just kind of a token foam fractionator that came with the tank. I think we occasionally clean the comp, but we don't really rely on this protein skimmer to really purify the water on this particular aquarium. I don't know what else to say about it. It's small, it's good enough for this size tank. It doesn't take up too much room. It's got a little adjustment lever here on the side. It's just, you know, a nice little token protein skimmer if you want to push your Nano Reef tank to do a little bit more. I haven't really kept up with them as much as I used to because I know they sold these as a drop-in for other tanks or sumps, but nowadays the most common place you're likely to see the Red Sea Prism protein skimmer is alongside some of their smaller models of all-in-one aquariums. All right, so the last protein skimmer I want to show you is one which I have not yet put into use. This is another one from Ultra Reef. This is the Ultra Reef Typhoon. It uses the Seachem SK900 STC. This is an absolute monster of air and water mixing with the needle wheel. Just like the UKS A180 that I showed you earlier, the build quality is just on a total other level. And this is the protein skimmer we plan to use on the 400-gallon aquarium, which we're just starting to make progress on. So I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of casual video showing off some of the different protein skimmers we use here around the Reef Builder Studio. We get a lot of questions of what protein skimmer people should use, and if you select the right model for your tank and just kind of how you like to skim, you're gonna do really, really well. And you know, honestly, these days, except for the very smallest models, I think a lot of protein skimmers are just, everything is just hitting a sweet spot of protein skimming, and most modern models available on the market today are going to do well for you. Like I said, this is not a top 10 video. This is just the 10 different skimmers we use here around the studio, almost all from different brands. And you know, it's just really fun, and it's kind of one of the alchemist side of the reef aquarium hobby. You know, there's a little bit of magic involved with injecting a bunch of air in water and having the scum come out of the cup and purifying your reef aquarium water. So if ever there was a video to get your questions about protein skimmers, adjustment, recommendations, now is a great time to put those down in comments. If you want to know more about protein skimmers, or if you have any other ideas for videos like this that you want us to do for you, let us know down below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and thanks again for helping us crack 100,000 subscribers. It's a real honor and privilege to bring you this content about reef aquarium keeping, and we'll see you guys on another one very soon.